It is American Racing Snobs alongside former ESPN Formula One contributor Eric Morse. I'm Tony Rizzuti. Glad to have you with us. Going to break down the Japanese Grand Prix from Suzuka. So much to talk about that race. Then we've got the Morse Code Report. We'll talk a little Bathurst, a little Petite LeMans. Eric, a lot going on, but we start with some breaking news out of Formula One.
Ooh, I haven't been on the internet for about an hour here. I was doing some work on a video. So what happened?
So we've known for, about a year now that the city of Miami in Florida here in the United States has been angling for a Formula One race. The original plan was to race down by the bayfront where the cruise ships are.
And the watermelons grow.
Well, the city of Miami, I assume it's the city or whoever the group is involved in the Miami trying to bring Grand Prix there, have agreed in principle with Formula One to build a course and race around where Hard Rock Stadium is, where the Miami Dolphins play, building a race course. In my mind, I picture it similar to Sochi, taking a current kind of entertainment and sports area and building a racetrack around it. The city or whoever's involved is going to vote on October 28th. But we may see another race here in the States down in Miami.
It's been a long time since we had two races in the United States in the same season. I think back in the early 80s when Watkins Glen still had the Grand Prix, there was the U.S. Grand Prix West that was added at Long Beach, and then those dates kind of jumped around from Phoenix, the street course, Dallas, Detroit had a street course as well. So this would be huge. I do get the impression that COTA would probably take a little bit of a hit, at least initially, in terms of attendance, because
sure,
you know how rich it is to try to go to one of these if you're just the average fan. But I do think this would be huge in growing the sport in the States. You and I, we would love this. We'll get more listeners. I like the idea. Let's do this. And also, when you mentioned that they're going to use the stadium, the first thing I thought of was, wow, this might look like Mexico City. Because even though that was a track that existed on the Formula One Grand Prix calendar in the past, when they came back to the track just a few years ago, they added that stadium section through the ballpark, and it's really iconic. You can hear the fans over the engines, and the drivers say they can hear it when they go into that stadium because all the noise is funneled down in that baseball park. So I can't imagine it would be that much different where the Miami Dolphins play.
The rendering they had was to take what would be the outside facade of the stadium and turn that into a grandstand and then build the pit lane across the track from there. So you would obviously the people
sounds complicated.
Well, the people would sit on the inside of the stadium to watch a football game. There would be a double you could walk back outside, and it'd be a big grandstand area for the main grandstand. I guess during a football game, that could be like a lounge area or something. I'm sure they have a way to enclose it.
Let's do it as a doubleheader. We'll get Tom Brady down there. He'll still be playing. He pretty much owns the Dolphins anyway, so this will be great. Let's do it.
Oh, wow. Shots fired. All right, let's jump into the Japanese Grand Prix. Obviously, in the last podcast, we talked about Super Typhoon was going to hit the racetrack, and we had no idea what was going to happen. You thought dry, I thought wet. We weren't sure when it was going to exactly hit. Well, it hit on Saturday, washing out qualifying for FP3, which made FP1 and FP2 super important. But they moved qualifying to Sunday morning, and it got off to a rather interesting start with the heavy winds.
Looked brutal out there. I thought some of those fans at the top of the grandstands were going to take flight.
Yeah. Those flags were whipping, and unfortunately for Robert Kubica, he was the first kind of issue as he drove wide on the racetrack. Looked like he barely even got into the fence, but ripped the whole front end off that car.
He needed a new chassis. And that's not you and I both, we're pretend race car drivers. We get in the video game simulator on iRacing, and you and I were talking about this last week. The first track you go to
Suzuka.
when you start up a new video game is you go to Suzuka.
Yeah.
It's a driver's track. I don't think I've ever crashed in that corner, and Kubica wasn't the only one. Kevin Magnussen followed suit shortly thereafter, so I got to believe that the wind was affecting those cars. These cars are so sensitive to begin with, so really no fault through their own. It ruined Magnussen's starting position because Grosjean, I think, actually got into Q3, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. So it definitely affected Magnussen's race. Kubica, it's just salt in the wound. He had And there's a lot going on at Williams right now. They
I
had an
have a
upgraded-
rant. This is going to be good. Go ahead, keep
well,
going.
I'll save most of the juicy stuff for you, but I know there's not enough spares, and they've got a new front wing, and both drivers want it.
And so Kubica, he did P1 and P2 with the new wing. He was doing the testing on the new wing, and then they pulled it off for qualifying. And he's like, why'd you pull my wing off? And they were like, well, since we don't have two of them, it's not fair to either one of you to give it to one of you. What? You only have one driver coming back next year. Why not give it to him? Well, we don't really have a number one and number two driver. Bull crap. Every race team has a one or two driver. They may not want to admit it to the public or to either driver, but every race team knows who their number one is. And whether Kubica should be the number one there at Williams or George Russell, the truth is George Russell's the only person guaranteed to be in that car next year. Why not give him the wing? Who's going to complain? What are you going to do, Kubica? Take your fire suit and leave? You're already doing that. Like, this isn't an attack on Kubica. The problem
bad
is
management.
It's horrible management.
They have enough problems.
Why would you not run your latest technology?
The basics right if you don't have a fast car. Gosh. And Williams has been focusing on the right things. They've got the best pit stops almost every week. That's something they can control. This was unnecessary drama down at the Williams pit.
Now, the thing I found funny during the whole thing was kudos to the racetrack for getting the area cleaned. They got a car on a flatbed back to pit lane and the track completely cleaned and put back in place. The billboards actually went back up in place. I think maybe the DRS flew over the window, but they got it back in like 7 minutes. There
amazing.
had to have been 80 workers out there with brooms. It was so cool. But then this is what was goofy to me. They unload the car and they put the Williams car on the rollers, and they're trying to roll it back into the garage, but they've got two guys trying to hold the cover over the car, and it keeps getting stuck in the little shop wheels, the little dolly wheels that are wheeling it back, so they'd stop, have to pull the cover, and then two guys are just holding the cover on, and I'm thinking to myself, why would you ever cover a Williams car? Like, who's going to go down to your pit lane to see what not to do? Why would you put a cover on it?
What I was going to say. I don't think anyone, it's like the dumb kid in school. You're not going to cheat off of him.
Yeah.
Apologies to Williams. That may be a harsh analogy.
No, it's not.
But I don't think.
You don't even have to put the
screens
up. Like, who's going to – now, look, in truth, you've got to do what you need to do so you build habits and people know what to do when you do.
Self-respect at this point.
Who's going to
self-respect?
Nobody's going to want to see what you've got underneath that car. Anyway, that was my little rant on Williams.
Nice.
You mentioned Magnussen. That was interesting. So it was a run for the pole.
And it looked like it was going to be a Ferrari one-lap pace. We knew that.
Because Bottas had been fast in all the practice. Bottas showed up ready to roll. He looked so fast.
We got early season spec Bottas. And the fact that Ferrari seems to have that one-lap pace now that they've piled downforce on, the bad news for Ferrari is it seems to eat tires in race runs. So Mercedes knew that even if they didn't get out the front row, a win wasn't out of the question. Now, two drivers really impressed me in qualifying. First of all, Bottas.
Yep.
Anytime you beat Lewis Hamilton, especially at Suzuka, he's one of the best ever at that track. So for Bottas to beat him to what turned out to be the all-important third position on the grid, that was huge on Sunday morning. And then Sebastian Vettel, vintage performance. It looked like Red Bull Sebastian Vettel in qualifying there. That was a fabulous lap.
It was a fabulous lap, and we've talked for so long about Mercedes having party mode. Well, wait until they go to party mode. Looks like Ferrari's got the new party mode. They've got something that they can go to out of nowhere. That car was 0.8 behind, I think, in P2, and he found it. And if you watch the onboard with Charles Leclerc, he was probably going to beat Vettel's lap. He just couldn't get through the last section
which is really short. It's the shortest sector in F1. It's just basically that last chicane.
He couldn't get through that chicane and get back onto the power. So obviously Ferrari's found something, as you've said, it chews up tires. Let's jump right into the race.
By the way, first time Vettel has beaten Leclerc in qualifying in 10 Grand Prix. Leclerc had beaten him 9 straight coming into Suzuka. Tip of the hat, Seb. Nice lap.
Yep. So kind of a unique start to the race. The guys didn't have a ton of time to kind of relax and everything.
I love these races where they don't get to run the full simulations. They don't know what the deg is. They don't know which tire is the right tire. I don't know if I want every Grand Prix weekend to be like that, but the ones that turn out this way, I'm thinking of Austin a couple years ago with all that rain. These are memorable races because of the unknown.
Yep.
Anything that throws a little chaos into the pecking order is good for me as a fan.
So we get to the start, and Sebastian Vettel goes from the top of the world, Ma, to what did you just do?
The pressure, man, it must have gotten to him because he really put his foot in it. He was lucky he didn't get the same fate that Kimi Räikkönen did a few weeks ago when he got the 25-second stop and hold penalty for a jump start. It's obvious he jumped the start, but it sounds like, to the letter of the rule, if you don't clear the electronic sensor or the edge of the box with the front nose, even if you're moving, he was able to get it woed up and not cross that line before the lights actually went out. So that's my understanding. I spent the first 10 laps going, oh, he's definitely getting a drive-through. I was shocked that he didn't. If my understanding is correct, then he's a very lucky boy that he got away with what he got away with. However, he still screwed the pooch on his start.
He did, and it really screwed that inside line as well, because if you watch the replay from Bottas, he sees the Ferrari move, and just the split second in his time to go, do I go? So he goes. He actually went a little bit early, but it was legal because he moved when the Ferrari moved, but there was just that split second of him making the reaction.
Did you see
that
that
he
fan
timed
video?
the lights perfectly.
It was almost like Austria 2017 where he nailed the start
And
perfectly.
everybody in that line went when he went too, and it was like the whole inside line was like,
plus it's the clean side of the track because it's dirty offline on the inside. So all those factors lead to Bottas just gone by the time they get to turn one. And they had been talking in the build-up to the race how no one had ever won the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka from the second row of the grid. Well, Bottas made everyone look silly with that start. I do think that without Sebastian's jump start, there's no way Bottas gets away like that. There was a great fan video that I saw posted. I think it was WTF1, a really awesome F1 parody, humor, satire site. But they had reposted some fan video that showed just from the side Vettel's jump start, and then you can see Bottas clearly goes before everyone else, but you can't see the lights in this video. You just see the cars. I'm assuming that if Bottas had jumped it, they would have nailed him.
I think he was right on the
I
look,
think you're
it's
right.
almost impossible to be right on the light because you have to see the light and react. I think he reacted to Vettel's car, and it just happened to be the lights went right then.
And it
ended
gifted
up
him
being
the
perfect.
lead and ultimately the race win, because I think controlling the opening stanza of this race was very important to whoever could get there. Vettel has his issues. Leclerc and Verstappen get away. Hamilton is P5 fighting elbow to elbow with the McLaren on the exit of turn number 1. This is not at all what the script said, by the way.
Yeah, I thought it was funny when they got in the debrief room. Vettel was kind of kicking Bottas, right? They were kind of razzing each other, and Bottas was like, nice start. And Vettel's like, and he's like, yeah, you jumped it. And Vettel turned and looked at him, and he went, so did you. And he's like, I didn't. And Vettel's like, stop lying. I'm sure Vettel must have seen either in his mirror or had seen the video. He's like, you jumped it too. You just got away with it because you were behind me.
They both got away with it.
Yeah.
Vettel just punished himself.
I honestly think, and you know me, I'm not a Mercedes guy at all. I think he nailed it. I think he got lucky that the lights switched right then.
Good.
But he went off the Ferrari, which would be obviously you're going to look, but if you see something move, you're probably going to go. Let's talk about that opening lap because there were several things that happened in the opening corner and really the opening sector of the race. First of all, Charles Leclerc. Charles so aggressive, and most of the time he gets away with it, which happened later in the race, but obviously getting into Max Verstappen, who had given him plenty of room, was not a good look.
Max was correct to be furious, especially when they said that there would be no investigation. I was beside myself, and I'm a Leclerc supporter. I was like, it was a clumsy move by Charles. I don't think it was intentional. I don't think he was trying to crowd him. I think he lost grip. and he washed out into Max.
But do you agree with Max in the fact that Max is like, everybody knows when that happens, you're going to lose your nose. It's not like that's never happened to him.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think it was intentional either.
I think he just trusted the Ferrari a little more than he should have.
I agree.
And I don't know if the wind had a factor in that. I don't have the data. I'm willing to give Charles the benefit of the doubt. Yes, he's aggressive, but he's not a dirty driver by any stretch of the imagination. This isn't a habit yet, but it was definitely worthy of a penalty in my mind, and I was shocked when they said no investigation necessary, and then I was a little miffed that they said after the race. I don't see what Charles could have said to the stewards that they wanted to interview him about that would have changed my view of this penalty at all. I think they missed the mark by kicking that can down to post-race. I think a 5-second stop hold before the first pit stop would have been in order. Job done, and let's go. But the drama with Leclerc's not over. He's got damage. I'm jumping up and down in my hotel room at Talladega going, this is dangerous. Ferrari tells him to pit. He ignores them. Is this a symptom of the lack of trust that Leclerc has right now, possibly from his fights with Vettel? Do you think that if Leclerc at the beginning of the season would have pitted when Ferrari told him to without questioning it, instead of riding around for 2 more laps saying, this feels okay, we don't need to pit?
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about that myself. I felt like that car was still pretty fast. So I think that was what he was thinking, just like, I'm not going to give up second. If he pits, he knows his Grand Prix is pretty much over. Mm-hmm. And normally you're going to make that pit stop because the car you can't drive the car at all. But the fact that he's still running second and holding people off, or maybe he was
third. Yeah, Vettel was second.
He's still holding people off. I think his thought was, I'm not coming in. I don't care what's dangling on this. It was dangerous as hell. And Ferrari told him, like you said, for 2 straight laps, box, box, box. No, it's not too bad.
And I don't know if we're hearing the entire transmission there. What I'd love to know as a fan and as a journalist like we are is, did Ferrari say, this is a safety hazard pit? Or, hey, we think this is performance-based? I would have loved to have known if they had said, Charles, this is dangerous, pit the car right now. Because, you know me, I'm a Hamilton fan. The last thing I want to see is him get a face full of Ferrari mirror going into 130R, and that's almost exactly what happens. At one of the most dangerous places, fastest corner on the racetrack, the wing comes apart, takes off the side view mirror of the Mercedes. If there hadn't been a halo there, we could be talking about huge fines. Possibly race bans. I don't know if that would go to the driver, to the team, but there would be a lot of questions to be answered. Luckily, it all came out okay.
We could have had another Rubens Barrichello incident, too.
Where the spring fell off of the Brawn and struck Felipe Massa in qualifying at the Hungaroring in 2009. It was not a good look for Charles, between the clumsy contact with Max and then disobeying the team and leading to a very dangerous situation on track. I was beside myself that the stewards weren't doing anything. Now, I ultimately got what I wanted in terms of what I thought was fair. They gave him a 5-second post-race penalty for avoidable contact. They gave him a 10-second penalty for the dangerous way that he drove around with a damaged race car and ultimately struck another car when it did come off. So that drops him from, 6th to 7th? A Ferrari should be finishing, even with damage, in the top 6 regardless. I do think that some sort of justice was served there, but I'd like some clearer communication of, did the FIA say, this is dangerous, you get, the orange flag with the black? Mm-hmm. That's you must pit now because of a dangerous situation. I don't know if that was displayed to him, and I don't know if Ferrari said this is a safety issue, but they've got to get on the same page with that. No one wants to see a repeat of this.
Now that we've destroyed Charles Leclerc, let's give him a little kudos. How about going through 130R wide open, holding on to a mirror with one hand and the steering wheel with the other? That's insane.
He's like, I don't know if we could call him Chuck Leclerc now, because that was a Chuck Yeager move, right?
It was almost a Chuck Norris move.
There's so much to like about this kid. Like you said, I don't want to beat him up too much. He had a rough couple laps there. I don't want to see this turn into a pattern with him. Hopefully it won't. I do think both penalties were merited, but yes, still, kudos are in order.
So Still talking about the first corner. I mean, we haven't really gotten past that so much. We did get into the details of what happened with those contacts. But how about, this was amazing, Sergio Perez, who started in that outside line, went from P17 to P11 in 2 corners.
And he
just went around the outside and just like, I'm going to keep digging. Hulkenberg does the same thing.
So did Magnussen.
It was nuts.
Magnussen made a fantastic start. I was reading his post-race comments, and he said, I thought we were in real trouble given what I did in qualifying, throwing the car into the barriers. He was in the top 10 by the end of lap 1.
It's crazy. Hulkenberg, when he went around,
then the Haas fell to earth again. He said, what was it, a typical Sunday where the car just doesn't work in the race? So unfortunate for him, but that was impressive at least to see the Haas come rocketing up. And as you mentioned, Hulkenberg was doing the same. We had 3 different cars from different teams making just jackrabbit starts, and I don't know how much of this was the trickle-down effect of what Vettel did and how much of it was, I think all those cars that we just mentioned were gridded on the clean side of the racetrack. I think that made a huge difference because the track was so green, having only had qualifying after the rainstorm.
Nico Hulkenberg, actually, by the time he got to the top of the S's, he was kind of like, how about that first corner, boys? Because he passed that's a video game move right there. That's what I do in every video game. I'm just going to go wide and just pass you all and hope it sticks. That was pretty good.
The old Fernando Alonso line. Remember, didn't he lose a championship doing that? Because he used to, if he couldn't get the inside, he used to set up for the outside and try to over-under people. And I think, I don't know if it was Raikkonen or someone else, just got Alonso's right rear tire. I think this was back in 2012 when he was battling Vettel. And he cut down a tire in the first corner, trying that exact same thing. So it's risk-reward. I love that first corner, how it goes straight to grass right on the exit.
It's one of the best in racing.
The best first corner in the F1 calendar.
Because of the Verstappen issue with the Leclerc contact, we really never knew what his Honda-powered Red Bull could do. But based on what we saw in practice and qualifying, I'm going to kind of say the Suzuka Special was a dud.
They took their grid penalties the last couple races to try to be in position to get a good finish here. They messed with the fuel mixture. They were doing some molecular
there was
science.
A lot of talk, man. Christian Horner was...
The car just didn't have pace, though, and I don't know how much of that was horsepower, but it's obvious that the Mercedes update and the last couple weeks of the improved spec of the Ferrari... They've kind of elevated themselves in the development race from the Red Bull. That doesn't mean they can't fight for podiums, especially if you get some guys banging wheels with each other, as Alex Albon, I believe, got his best career finish in 4th in the sister Red Bull. If you're a Red Bull fan, I don't think all hope is lost. We're going to the high-altitude circuit in Mexico City next in a couple weeks. Traditionally, that has been a Red Bull track. So... even with the Ferrari updates, with the Mercedes updates, we'll see how they hang at high altitude. But, yeah, they've got to be a little bit disappointed with how that panned out. It's such a big deal when you're the main partner of Honda. I remember when Toro Rosso was the only Honda engine car last year. I've never seen so much Toro Rosso merch at the racetrack before because everybody wanted that Honda H on the side of their hat.
And people still they wore all that stuff. That was really cool to see. All right.
By the way, while we're talking Toro Rosso, how about Naoki Yamamoto?
That was cool.
He is a charming young man. He is so polite.
Yeah, isn't he
so professional.
30?
He's 31.
Yeah.
He's a little long in the tooth to be in a development program to lead to F1, but he's the big man on campus when it comes to Japanese single-seater racing. The Super Formula, that's such a cool series. He's a 2-time champion, looking for a 3rd this year. Fantastic pace in FP1, driving Pierre Gasly's car. He was only a 1/10 of a second off of Danny Kvyat, who's got, 5 years experience in these cars? That is a major achievement. And by the way, he walked up to Pierre Gasly and said he apologized for taking his seat for FP1.
Yeah, because
a lot of people, kind of classy individual he is. This guy's great. I'd love to see more of him.
Yeah, because people were concerned with only one practice. Gasly was kind of getting screwed, and there wasn't anything they could do about it. They had this plan for forever, and they weren't going to not do it.
I don't think he harmed the team one
No,
bit.
I think he set it up perfect for him. I think he got it dialed in because Gasly
qualified great. Finished, 8th?
He had another great run. He seemed so comfortable at Toro Rosso. He was happy after the race. He was excited. The team's happy in him. I mean, this has seemed to be a win-win for everybody in that drop-off. I mean, I'm certain he probably I don't know how the contracts work, if he took a pay cut or they're just paying him ridiculous amounts from back on the Red Bull thing. But Gasly, whose career looked in jeopardy, it looks pretty good right now. It really
does.
One
of those NHL two-way contracts where you get
nice.
paid this rate if you're at the big club. If you get sent down to the AHL, you get this rate. I don't know if Red Bull has that.
Not really a whole lot to talk about once we get into the actual race from up front as far as Bottas, because he was in another stratosphere.
I got a theory here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that Hamilton that very easily could have been a Mercedes 1-2.
So a question from Gary, who likes to send us a response. He had one with us last week. He mentioned the same thing I think you're thinking and I was thinking at home, which was Hamilton can make these tires last.
I thought he could make it last, especially if they put him on the hards. But I thought it was obvious that Mercedes was going to attempt to one-stop this race because they were so much nicer to their tires than the Ferraris were. Once Bottas got the track position, we knew that Bottas was going to be able to control the pace, and he drove away from Vettel very nicely. So Bottas, it made sense for him to switch strategy to a two-stopper just so that they wouldn't be vulnerable to Ferrari, because Ferrari was always going to two-stop it. Leclerc's kind of out of the picture after that pit stop, so they're covering Sebastian Vettel. Bottas, he's got a 10-second lead. He has to switch to the two-stopper. When Hamilton went so far on his first stint, I was absolutely shocked that they didn't put him on the harder tires and say, here, you got a shot to win this thing. Now, Bottas absolutely deserved to win that race. It was his from the first corner. I don't think Mercedes really gave Hamilton a fair shot to compete, though, because I think that was a 1-2 that they gave away by switching Hamilton to the two-stopper. Hamilton's complaining on the radio, and their response was, Deg was higher than we thought. Sorry. And the hard tire's an unknown. Sorry. That's a consequence of not having FP3 and the rain situation on Saturday.
I thought it would have been worth trying to see if he could have made it on those tires. Maybe
I would have loved
maybe
to
he
have
got
seen
eaten up, but I just felt like if anybody can get it. Remember what he did at Monaco? I mean, if anybody can get a tire to the distance, I think it could have been him.
The only positive I see for Mercedes is it keeps Bottas and Hamilton clear of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine a situation where they tell Valtteri, you had the choice of strategy, you were leading this race,
Valtteri?
But you have to pass Hamilton. Valtteri, this is James. You have to pass Hamilton on track for the win. They may have done this just to keep this feel-good attitude as they wrap up their 6th straight Constructors' Championship this weekend. Maybe they shied away from the fight because I'm not sure that Hamilton would have beaten Valtteri in that situation, but I'm pretty sure he could have beaten Sebastian.
I thought he could have finished
and made
second.
It a 1-2. I think second was possible. I love that Hamilton's on the radio, and sometimes it's like a broken record that he's complaining about, guys, why is the strategy playing out this way? But I was thinking about it. Yeah, it could be annoying, and I see why the Hamilton detractors think that he whines too much, but I love the fire that he has, where he's like, I'm third in the race. I can still win this. Give me the tools to win this. What do I have to do to win this race? I love that there is no quit in that driver.
Yep.
That's a once-in-a-generation trait of a racer that you see in Lewis Hamilton, that he is never out. He is the most tenacious driver I think I have ever seen when it comes to keeping his foot down and wanting to win from any position in that race. He thinks it's possible, and if he feels like he's not getting the tools he needs from the pit wall, he's going to speak up.
Gary, thanks for the question. Obviously, we were thinking the exact same thing. And look, the team knows more about what's going on with those tires. They put up the graphic. It was cool to see this week with the Amazon Web Services doing the analytics showing that with still about 10 laps to go or 12 laps to go, he only had 20% tire left. So, I mean, you certainly don't want to have one go down on you and you end up putting it into the fence and everything comes to the end. So
and by the way,
I'm going to give them the benefit of
at Vettel there. He was pushing for everything, but that straight line, it's hard to pass at Suzuka anyway, but he threw the kitchen sink at Seb, and the Ferrari had every answer for it. So it was fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but Gary, we were thinking the same thing, that maybe Hamilton could have nursed those to the end and finished second. We just joked that Bottas didn't get a Valtteri, this is James, after the checkered flag, as they're telling Bottas the combination of things to get the engine put in the mode they need to get it to bring it back to pit road. He keys the mic. Valtteri did and goes, James, this is Valtteri. It was brilliant. And James Allison came across the radio and he goes, I love it. Yes, congrats. And then the next thing you hear is, Valtteri, this is Toto. That's exactly what it sounded like. It was all muffled. We have won 6 championships. Thanks to you. Toto Wolff. Come on,
And
man.
by the way, they have eliminated Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, and Sebastian Vettel from championship contention. It is an unprecedented double world championship for the 6th straight
Think of the
year.
start they got to. I mean, this thing's been settled since Bahrain went up in smoke.
But until it's done and dusted, you can't put the trophy in your cabinet. This might be the greatest team in F1 history.
I agree.
I think about Lotus in the 1960s was very strong. Ferrari of the early 2000s. Williams had a run in the 1990s. McLaren's been off and on, but no one has sustained success like this.
Yeah, it's been incredible.
And it can be frustrating if you're not a Mercedes fan to watch one team dominate, but they do the work. They do the work, and they get the job done. So hats off to everyone in silver, the white overalls, all that stuff at Stuttgart Mercedes headquarters. It's well-deserved.
Yeah, I'll give them a little clap right there. They did a really nice job.
So even though Lewis Hamilton didn't win the race, we do have some milestones that should be acknowledged. Lewis Hamilton did bang in fastest lap towards the end. Leclerc did try to take it from him, but couldn't make any headway on him. So for Lewis, that's his 46th fastest lap of his career. That ties him for second place all time. You know who he's tied with?
Michael Schumacher.
No, Michael's number 1. I don't think he's going to be caught either. He's got 77, but now
Kimi Räikkönen.
Tied at 46. It is Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah.
How about you? Second time's a charm.
Yeah, well.
I don't think that record's going to fall. That's an awful lot of ground to make up between Lewis and Michael. However, one of Michael's records that will likely fall, and soon, that is Hamilton's 148th podium, second all-time, 7 behind Michael Schumacher at the rate he's going. That'll tumble pretty early next year.
He should get that one.
He's been a podium machine since he entered Formula One. So congrats to Lewis Hamilton. I know you were just holding up your phone at me and pointing while I was talking there at some video of Sebastian Vettel. What you got there?
Yeah, Formula One on their Instagram had posted a thing during the post-race interviews that Paul DiResta was doing. When DiResta was talking to Bottas, Vettel climbed down off this it's just a little riser that they stand on so that they can position the camera right. He went down and he went and looked at the front wing of Bottas's car, the very front of the nose, like the nose thing, and he put his foot on it and kind of pushed it down, and then he looked, then he walked back over to his car and pushed it down, then grabbed it with his hands and he started wiggling the Ferrari nose, went back to the Mercedes, moved the number 1 marker, not the first time he's ever done that, and reached underneath their wing and started wiggling it up and down, and then looked at it and then walked back over to the side. So there was something he obviously wanted to see in that front nose and wonder how much, what would that be, oscillation you get in it, I guess.
Here, Tony, I'm going to make you do some work here. I've got a photo I want to send you. You can drop it in the podcast so when we're talking about it, people can see it at just this section of the show. This is not the first time Sebastian Vettel has done this. I caught him doing this in Canada in 2011. Remember that famous race where he got passed on the last lap by Jenson Button's McLaren, the rain-affected race? Seriously, the greatest motor race I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes. I was in Parc Fermé, behind the podium on the paddock side near the media center, and I took my own personal camera and I went up over the fence that you couldn't really see through and took a picture of the Jenson Button celebrating. He's jumping into the arms of the McLaren crew, and you can see Sebastian Vettel pouring over the back diffuser area of Jenson Button's car that had beaten him in 2011. So he's got a habit of checking out the other cars when he thinks other people aren't looking.
He's like,
there's so many cameras, though. How you're not going to get away with it.
Magnum PI.
Well, remember when he grew that mustache and had like that weird haircut? That's his alter ego.
Oh, crazy stuff from that. What else? Carlos Sainz with a fantastic run. In fact, when you mentioned Leclerc trying to get those fastest laps, he had to do that because he wasn't going to get past Carlos. And Carlos even said after the race to his team, And the rest of the McLaren guys, this was the first time we've been able to run with them, and I really felt like I could battle with them. What a great run for Carlos Sainz. That orange car between him and Lando Norris, Lando getting shoved off by Albon at one point in time in the race. I mean, they have been so impressive in the midfield this year.
You look at how many points they've scored, and it looks like Sainz is just mopping the floor with Norris, but we know there's some bad luck in there. There's some growing pains. He is a true rookie in F1, but he is not far off the pace. They've both driven really well, and those orange cars are approaching escape velocity from the gravity of midfield here. They're about to be on an island. They can have some lonely races here when they find themselves in between the Red Bulls at the back of the top three and well in front of usually the Renaults, I'd say, would be the consistently second strongest car in the midfield. But another very nice drive from Carlos Sainz. How about Danny Rick? I thought he was one of the most entertaining drivers out there. The Honey Badger was back. He was taking names, kicking ass, driving through the field, especially since he had a rough time in qualifying, coming all the way up to P6. Good job, Danny Rick.
You know who else was taking names?
Racing Point.
Racing Point, and the names that they were taking all belong to Renault. We won't get into the details today. This will be something we'll break down next week. But basically, Racing Point has accused Renault of breaking the rules as it deals.
They question the legality of the brake-by-wire system, basically.
Apparently, they say it's set up by track with some type of data distance to where each corner the brake bias can automatically change and the driver doesn't have to do it. I don't know all the details, but it's a 12-page dossier. Eric, my question to you is 12 pages didn't just come out at Japan. This really feels like something they've been sitting on for most of the year, almost to where they can say they've done it all year, you have to do something about it. Could you imagine if Renault were to get thrown out of Formula One?
They would lose their constructors' points is what would happen. Their results would be null and void. They'd get no prize money. That would be a huge blow. Yeah.
Jinx.
It would turn their business model upside down, basically. So we'll see where this goes. Like you said, a little more than we can bite off and chew on in this show since we've
plus
already.
So much more is going to be coming out as they look at all this. So, but that was a end of the race. What?
Yeah, I'm looking at my post-race news, going, they did what now? It's nothing new. When it comes to the legality of the cars, it's always another team that brings it to the steward's attention. That's kind of how it works. You think about. It's even in the movie Rush.
It's just odd that the Racing Point would know it. They don't run Renault engines. How would they know?
Someone's got to have loose lips down there because you can't just look at a car and know that.
Wasn't there a period of time one time that Ferrari sent somebody or somebody hired a former Ferrari guy?
2007 McLaren Spygate.
Yeah.
Where they got a whole bunch of technical documents. They got a $100 million fine and thrown out of the World Championship in 2007, and they didn't even argue it. That's the last time you've seen something big like this. But if you, I mentioned the movie Rush.
Yep.
You remember when they protest? I think Ferrari protested James Hunt's car for being too wide across the rear axle, and the stewards took away a win, and then they filed an appeal, and then they won that. They kind of touch on that briefly in the movie, but this has been in F1 for decades. Mm-hmm. It will continue to be in F1, but this was a bit of a bombshell, and we'll take a look at that later.
It is when you talk about one of the big manufacturers in the sport and their engine supply and everything. It just was crazy to hear. A couple other little news and notes. Alfa Romeo will make a decision in the next week or so as to who will be their other driver. Obviously, Kimi Räikkönen is locked in for next year. Antonio Giovinazzi kind of started the season, I'd say, on the hot seat. Wasn't really performing, but over the last, say, 7 or 8 Grand Prix, he's kind of matched Kimi as far as qualifying goes. He hasn't had any of the big runs. I think Kimi's had a couple of P7s, but he's been hovering right around that top 10. He's gotten some points.
There's progress.
I
think Ferrari's high on him,
yep.
And since he's a Ferrari Academy driver, I think they're inclined to keep him there. I'd be surprised at this stage if they did drop him. His results are nowhere near Kimi Räikkönen, but Kimi Räikkönen is going to go down as one of the all-time greats in F1, probably in the top 15 or 20 for sure of all time. So to be in the same league as him as the season goes on, that's got to be the goal for a young driver, and he's starting to check those boxes. So I think he'll probably be back next year would be my guess.
So that starts to limit the seats that might be available to Nico Hülkenberg. I think
he's out.
I just don't see a scenario where he's in there. But here was an odd thing. I almost mentioned this in last week's podcast, but I had a dream, and I didn't because maybe it had happened and I didn't know, but I couldn't find anything on it. I had a dream, and it was the most vivid dream of all time, that Nicholas Latifi is getting the Williams ride.
I don't think that's that far off. We've been talking about that for the last...
I mean, it was vivid, Eric. Like, that's why I didn't say
done?
anything, because I was like, maybe he did and I just forgot. Or
Now, they haven't announced anything, but I do think that he is
Why
the
would I have
front
a
runner.
dream about Nicholas Latifi? I don't even watch F2.
I told you like maybe 3 weeks ago that I thought he was going to be, as soon as they announced that Kubica was out, you probably heard it from me that I thought Latifi would be the front runner.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It was weird, though, because, I mean, it was as vivid as can be. All right, so that's going to sum up what all went down in Japan. I thought it was a really interesting
By the way,
race.
Tony, if you have any other dreams about Canadian Formula One drivers, you should seek outside assistance, especially if it's Jacques Villeneuve. If you dream about Jacques Villeneuve, we may need to get a shrink in here.
I blame this all on Lance Stroll showing up on the cover of my Formula One 2019 game.
Still not over that.
Started it, and I'm telling you that's where it's at. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, the Morse Code Report. We're going to talk a little Bathurst 1000. We're going to talk a little Petite LeMans. We're going to wrap up this edition of American Racing Snobs. Stay tuned.
Here's your chance to win a set of your very own Hercules tires. Go to HerculesTires.com/MRN. Simply register, and each month we'll give away one set of tires. Hercules Tires has the value, selection, and industry-leading mileage coverage to get you wherever you need to go, no matter where the road takes you. Register now for your chance to win a set of Hercules tires at HerculesTires.com/MRN. Hercules Tires. Ride on our street.
Welcome back to American Racing Snobs. Eric Morse alongside Tony Rizzuti. This was the last big racing weekend in my mind of the season, with multiple series around the world putting on the types of racing that we love on this show. I want to dive right into Petite LeMans. It's a 10-hour race, Tony. Road Atlanta. It's a fantastic event. I had the fortune to go there maybe 2 years ago. Wonderful facility. It's our type of people. They are our type of fans when we go to there. It's a high IQ crowd. They love their sports car racing. Wonderful event. The finale for the 50th anniversary of IMSA. It's the celebrations all coming to a head. There's another retro Coca-Cola livery Porsche. All kinds of cool things going on. Because we've gone so long with our F1, I'm going to cut to the chase right now. There was huge drama with 20 minutes to go in this 10-hour race. The 5-car, which could be making its farewell, its swan song from IMSA in the prototype category, driven by Felipe Albuquerque, was off the track as the race leader with a probable brake failure, and that handed the lead to his teammate in the Wheelin' Cadillac. That's Pippo Durrani, Felipe Nasr, and a driver who may be leaving the sport as well, Eric Curran, a former champion in that car, had moved to the endurance role the last 2 seasons. They are able to go out in style with the victory, but it wasn't enough to close the gap as Team Penske Acura gets the last laugh in their second season in the sport. Dane Cameron, Juan Pablo Montoya, our 2019 WeatherTech Sports Car Series champions in the DPI category. Congratulations to them. In GTLM, it was James Collado, Alessandro Perguidi, and Daniel Serra with the Ferrari beating back Earl Bamber and Vantor, claiming the title. They beat back the Ford, is what I meant to say. By the way, fond farewell to the Fords. Yep. They put on a great show.
People were crying.
Yeah, it's the best race car of the last decade. I don't think there's anything that touches it in terms of sports cars, and I put it in my all-time favorites along with the original. It's such a faithful tribute, and what they achieved in this 4-year program, it was a delight to have them at the racetrack. I really hope we see some customer cars in the future. Keep that look out there. But Chip Ganassi did a great job. They were in contention. One of the cars ended up in the tires, I believe, having a spin going up the hill midway through the race. And I think the 67 finished second, just 6 seconds off the pace of the Ferrari. Another good Ford-Ferrari battle. That'll tee us up nicely for that movie that's coming out soon this fall. Who was that? Christian Bale, Matt Damon as Carroll Shelby,
good.
and who was it? Ken Miles? Is that who he plays?
I believe so.
That's going to be awesome. I can't wait. I digress. Congratulations go to Earl Bamber, Lawrence Vantor, with the Porsche claiming the championship in GTLM. In GTD, on the final lap, Felipe Fraga was off the track because he was out of fuel in the Keating-owned Mercury. Heartbreak for them. However, second place was Bill Oberlin, and this is a huge deal. He had a fight to the finish, able to get to the checkered flag first with his Turner BMW. You know why that matters?
He's Mr. BMW.
It matters because he is now tied Scott Pruitt for the all-time wins list in American sports car racing history, victory number 60. How about you, Bill Oberlin?
Incredible driver. Super nice guy, too.
Yeah, and he's been doing this for a while, but he has got so much pace and professionalism. You couldn't look for a nicer guy to get up there and compete for these records. So he is now tied with Scott Pruitt. That's how you finish a season. Congratulations to everybody over at IMSA and their family for such a successful 50th anniversary campaign. I can't wait to see what year number 51 brings with a new president coming over from Mazda. His name escapes me right now.
John Doonan, super nice guy. I've known him pretty much my whole life. We ran around as kids. Our dads raced against each other. I'll tell you what. John knows racing inside and out. He is a racer at the very core of who he is. He's a great businessman. He understands all the different facets. The sport could not be in better hands.
And also, a huge thank you to the outgoing president, Scott Atherton, for everything he's done in the last 30 years to push sports cars forward in this country. We all owe him a debt of gratitude. So thank you so much, Scott Atherton. We look forward to the next era with Mr. Doonan here as IMSA moves into the future. Their 51st season will kick off next year at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, one of my favorite races as well.
Cannot wait to see that 2020 mid-engine Corvette that took some exhibition laps in anger at Road Atlanta. It sounded beautiful. It looked beautiful. I cannot wait to see that car next year.
Last but not least, one of the great races on planet Earth, the Bathurst 1000 Mount Panorama. It was an exciting race. It always is there. Tony, it was, I'm trying to think of the exact numbers off the top of my head. It's a 1,000-kilometer race that usually takes about 6 hours.
Yep.
In the first half of the race, there was one safety car, and it happened like on the first lap. We had somebody going up just on the exit of the cutting at the top of the mountain, got into the wall, ended their day, brought out the safety car. We didn't have a caution for hours. I think it was about 3.5 hours of green flag running. Our boys, Alex Rossi, James Hinchcliffe, they started towards the back. They started to work their way forward. They did lose a lap in that opening salvo there because it was such a long green flag run at the start of this race. They had yellow fever at the end of this thing. There were 7 safety cars in the final 3 hours of this race, and it really turned it into a fuel mileage battle.
Sounds like a late model race at Martinsville.
They were yo-yoing back and forth with some different, that's just the heat races there, Tony, by the way. Anyway, it turned into a yo-yo between, it looked like Scotty McLaughlin and his co-driver Alexander Prema had the advantage. However, you had the 888s were both up there. You had the other Penske of Fabian Coulthard had driven through the field after a poor qualifying effort. With some late safety cars, it looked like Shane Van Gisbergen in the Red Bull 97 was going to be in the catbird seat because he needed less fuel than everyone and could take a shorter pit stop. However, full course caution, and everyone's going to come in and try to make it to the end. We're like 1 lap short on fuel. So everyone pits knowing that they're going to have to save at least a lap worth, and this is a pretty long course. This is where it gets interesting. The second Team Penske car was in the 3rd position. So at the front, it's McLaughlin leading Win Cup, and then Coulthard in the other Team Penske DJR Mustang starts backing up the field because they got a double stack just like in F1 with their pit stops. Tony, there's no rule like there is in NASCAR that if you don't maintain safety car speed that you can be passed. So he is backing up the entire field and effectively turns it into a 2-car race. He holds up Shane Van Gisbergen. Really don't like this rule. There are some things that our snob friends may disagree. There are a couple things that NASCAR does so well that other series should look at. 2 things off the top of my head. Overtime, I love the way NASCAR finishes races under green to a point, and I love that they don't put up with this kind of BS with someone screwing up everyone behind him under caution, intentionally trying to build a gap. You see it a little bit in F1, but not that much.
It's getting worse.
You'll see just a tiny little bit, but they will penalize someone. They did end up penalizing Coulthard here, but it was too little too late. It kind of separated the field there. Van Gisbergen, I think, had the race stolen from him in that both cars were milking the fuel cell, but they decided to unleash Whincup and commit to an extra stop. That handed the lead to McLaughlin, but yet another late safety car led to a 1-lap sprint with a hungry Shane Van Gisbergen all over the back of the Mustang. However, Scott McLaughlin, the driver who has won seemingly everything this year, has now filled the last void in his trophy case. Win number 18 of the year, but his very first at Bathurst. Congratulations are in order to Scott McLaughlin. Not going out on a limb here, saying he was the best driver in the world this week. Tony, there's a chance he might be coming to the States, and that would be a huge treat. No matter if it's sports cars, NASCAR, single-seaters, if Penske brings him over, and he's been talking about this for a couple of years since he joined the Penske Armada, that would be a huge treat to see a driver of his caliber in his prime come over and try to switch disciplines.
Would love to see what he can do against some of the best that are racing over here in the bigger series.
Also, huge congratulations to Alexander Prema. His pace made this win possible for them. The co-drivers, so much pressure is put on them in this event. For DJR Team Penske, Dick Johnson last won this race in 1994. As he said in his post-race interview, 25 goddamn years, finally. So congratulations to them. How about this season for Roger Penske? Indy 500 with Simon Pagenaud. IndyCar champion Joseph Newgarden. IMSA DPI title with Juan Pablo Montoya and Dane Cameron. Now add Bathurst and what is likely going to be a Supercars title. Oh, and by the way, Ryan Blaney won Talladega on Monday.
And he's got, what, 2 drivers?
Three
drivers
Joey,
that still
Brad,
have a chance at the championship.
Ryan are all alive. He is the American equivalent to Enzo Ferrari.
He's the captain.
He is the man. Rossi and Hinchcliffe, after going a lap down early, they went that long time trying to work their way back up the order. They got to 16th, but then Alex Rossi ended up beaching it. They lost another lap, came home in the 19th position. It was really fun watching them. I hope they do it again. I love wild card entries like that. Great weekend of racing. I'm exhausted. How about you?
I am as well.
I'm sleep deprived. I mean, it took 8 hours to watch Bathurst. I had to get the Reader's Digest version of Petite because I was working in Talladega, which rained out, and ended up driving home from that. So I don't even know what time zone I'm in right now.
By the way, last week, if you all caught it, our good friend Sarah McLaren gave us a public service announcement about spoilers. Apparently, it didn't quite work for me.
Oh, someone spoiled you?
So my son and I watched qualifying live, and we set the DVR for the race. Turned off the TV as soon as qualifying was over. He went to bed. He's only 10. He went to bed. I played some computer games and stuff. Wake up the next morning. I don't know what it was, 9:45 or so, close to 10. I go in and make coffee. We make a little breakfast. We sit down to watch the Formula One race on the DVR. We turn on the TV, and there's Bottas spraying champagne in victory lane.
That's the
worst
replay
feeling. Had just ended. Now, the only good part about it was I saw Hamilton, I saw Bottas, I couldn't see the third driver.
So at least you had some mystery.
But it kind of ruined the race, if I'm being honest. Especially when
worst.
I had my 2 drivers lock out the front row, and I went, well, they both don't get there. And where Bottas was sitting, I knew he had won.
Yeah.
The spoilers.
It's the worst. I was lucky. I was working Talladega, and as soon as we rained out, I was able to come back to the hotel room and put on F1 immediately. And I've been very good about staying off social and not going to my normal websites.
Because it was evening, I figured you might be watching qualifying live because it was like 9 o'clock at night, and I'm like, oh, Eric's probably definitely watching this, and the cars are spinning out, and I'm like, oh, I got to talk to somebody about this, and you're like, I haven't watched it yet. I'm waiting on my wife.
I was waiting for Bronwyn because she was at Petite, and I was waiting for her to drive down from Road Atlanta to Talladega, and we watched qualifying, and right when we finished qualifying, it was like, man, the Grand Prix is about to start any minute, and we're like, oh, man, we're both beat. So we just went to bed and decided to watch as soon as we got back from Talladega. So it worked out.
Damn,
but
spoilers.
I have had some furious moments because of spoilers. So, yeah, take that PSA seriously. That is take care of your fellow F1 fans.
We may have to put her in this one when we actually get it all tightened up. All right, well, that's going to do it for our show. Next week, obviously, we will preview the Mexican Grand Prix as the cars start to make it over here to North America. So we'll talk about that race. We'll also dive a little bit deeper into the Renault situation. What did Racing Point know? When did they know? We'll dive into that a little bit. We'll also talk about the potential for qualifying races. As we're recording this right now, the Formula One teams are supposed to be getting together to decide if they want to try it next year in 4 potential races to see if it is something they want moving forward with the new rules come 2021. So we'll talk about what was discussed in that, why or why not they didn't do it, and as always, all the good racing news. All right, thanks to everybody who left us a question. Be sure to leave us a review, leave us a question. As you can see from these shows, we'll answer them, and we enjoy the feedback. For Eric Morse, I'm Tony Rizzuti. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of American Racing Snobs. We'll talk to you next week.